an embarrassing ambassador running for Senate, outlaw kayaking, lightning strikes, and more on this episode of the Reykjavik News Desk. First up on the Reykjavik News Desk, when you're an American living in Iceland, you don't really think too much about who the ambassador is. You might not even know who they are. In fact, most of your dealings with the U.S. Embassy are going to be minimal at best unless you need to renew your passport. But for about 2 very weird years, from 2019 to 2021, every American in Iceland knew who the U.S. ambassador was because he was embarrassing, and we wanted him gone. And now he's running for U.S. Senate in Nevada. I'm talking about a man named Jeffrey Gunter, and if you don't know who he is, I've linked to a CBS News story in the description below, which details some of the shenanigans that he reportedly got up to. But in a nutshell, during his time here, he reportedly wanted to carry a handgun, he wanted a stab-proof vest, he wanted to be chauffeured around in an armored car. He is also fond of calling the coronavirus the invisible China virus, and reportedly spent so much time working remotely from California that then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had to call him and tell him to get back to Iceland. It's a really wild article. I highly recommend giving it a read. Anyway, a lot of Americans found him to be, racist and embarrassing, and some folks wanted him gone and implored the Icelandic government to send him packing, which is a far cry from how he depicts himself in his latest campaign video, wherein he says in part, quote, "I was honored and humbled to serve as President Trump's ambassador to Iceland, where I fought the deep state, I fought China, and I fought Russia's influence in the Arctic and the Great High North." Well, the part about him being the U.S. ambassador to Iceland appointed by Donald Trump, that part's true. The rest of it gives you some kind of idea about what kind of guy this is. And just as a fun fact, he used to get pizza almost every day for lunch at a pizzeria that was on the ground floor of the building that I used to work at. And he always seemed to have at least 2 or 3 bodyguards with him when he was there. And not even Kim Kardashian had this many bodyguards when she came to Iceland, but, Anyway, again, he's running for U.S. Senate in Nevada, so if you're a voter in that area, just bear all this in mind. Speaking of ambassadors, it finally happened. The Russian ambassador to Iceland has left the country. Now, as I reported earlier this summer, the Icelandic foreign minister had asked the Russian government to clear out their ambassador because there really wasn't much by way of diplomacy going on between our two countries, which, definitely makes sense. But Russia was not too pleased with this, and they warned that there would be consequences. Well, apart from the embassy staff reducing from 20 people to 8, because there are Russian citizens in Iceland and they presumably still need consular services, we haven't really seen any consequences from the Russian government. Or have we? Maybe the volcano was Russia's doing all along. Maybe the eruption was a nefarious plot from the Russian government to boost tourism. Look, I grew up in Reagan's America, okay? We were taught that Russians were capable of anything. Pretty incredible how that turned out, huh? In more disturbing news, I reported on the case of Blessing Uzoma in my last video. Now, she is a survivor of human trafficking who fled to Iceland 5 years ago and has recently been denied international protection by the Directorate of Immigration, and she's been stripped of everything: housing, healthcare, even food. Now, bear in mind, she would love to work in Iceland. She said that she wants to work in Iceland to be able to make a life for herself here, but the law prevents her from doing so. Well, now a lawyer for Blessing Uzoma believes that this denial of services that was enshrined in changes made to the law on foreigners earlier this summer, he believes that these denial of services are a violation of international human rights laws that Iceland is a signatory country to. Now, her case is a particularly complicated one, but these changes to the law on foreigners, specifically this denial of essential services to people who have sought international protection in Iceland, these changes have had farther-reaching consequences. 2 other survivors of human trafficking are facing impending houselessness because of this law, and it gets worse. Despite the fact that this law is supposed to make exceptions for families with children, there have been some families with children who are reportedly being denied these essential services, such as shelter and food, by immigration services. And look, I know this is a touchy subject for some people, but the facts of the matter here are pretty clear. International law enshrines the right to seek international protection. Therefore, these are people who came to this country legally. They want to work for a living, but the law won't let them. Instead, they are made to wait for months or even years, fed on a pittance, when, again, they would rather work for a living, but the law prevents them. Their cases are very often not even examined by immigration authorities, but are rather told months or even years later that their cases have been rejected and that they have to leave the country within 30 days or live on the streets. And it makes no human sense. Countless human rights orgs have said this. Countless family and children's rights orgs have said this. Countless legal experts have said this. But this is a law that was passed earlier this summer anyway, and we'll probably have to wait until next elections, probably, hopefully, to be able to change these laws for the better. I'm sorry, this is just a topic that gets me pretty worked up. I just really want our country to do better than this. So let's all take a deep breath, okay? There. So, how about a palate cleanser? So, you might know the island of Surtsey. This is Iceland's youngest island, and it was formed by a volcanic eruption in 1963, and since then, it's been a protected area and a sanctuary of sorts. This is a priceless living laboratory wherein researchers can witness in real time how a volcanic island goes from a pile of cooled lava to a living, thriving island filled with animal and plant life. But to one clout chaser on TikTok, it was also a chance to get a lot of attention, and he got it. An Icelandic man proudly shared a video of himself having kayaked to Surtsey and then posing proudly on the island, being shot with drone footage with the caption, "First in the world to row a kayak to Surtsey," and the accompanying music being the Stone Roses song, "I Want to Be Adored." Yeah, dude, clearly. It's kind of a neat video, and I've linked to it in the description, which you have to have a TikTok account to watch. But what I liked especially were all the Icelanders in the comments tagging the Environment Agency of Iceland. You see, the accompanying song with this video should have been "I Fought the Law," because that's what he did. He broke the law. And now he's being charged because you need a special permit from the Environment Agency of Iceland to go to Surtsey, and he didn't have one. But you know, if you can't, on a whim, just go into a protected area and potentially contaminate the setting with whatever is clinging to your body at the time, can we really call ourselves a free country? I guess that's up to the courts to decide, really. And lastly, on the Reykjavik News Desk, lightning. Now, Iceland is known for a lot of weather conditions. We've got wind, rain, snow, wind, freezing rain, and more wind, but lightning is not something that we're well known for, because to make lightning, you need warm air meeting cold air, and we don't get a lot of warm air. Well, that's changing due to a warming planet, but lightning is still uncommon enough that when it does happen in Iceland, it makes the news, especially if there's video. And there is video, which I've linked in the description below, and as you'll see, the lightning flash occurs, and then about 10 seconds later, you hear the thunder. Now, when I was a kid, I was taught a trick about how to calculate how far away lightning is based on how many seconds pass between the lightning flash and the thunder, but I didn't remember the exact details, and so I looked it up. Apparently, every 5 seconds between the lightning flash and the thunder is equal to about a mile, or every 3 seconds being equal to a kilometer, which makes this one of the rare instances in which that medieval system of weights and measures is actually simpler than the metric system. Anyway, it turns out that the lightning struck about 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers away, which I think is probably a pretty safe distance, but I'm no expert. And that's all I have for you today on the Reykjavik News Desk. Be sure and like and subscribe. And just as a reminder, this Monday, my video on hitchhiking around Iceland drops. Now, this is both a memoir, a collection of stories, adventures that I've had hitchhiking around Iceland, but also interwoven within these stories are tips that I would like to give you on if you want to hitchhike in Iceland, how to do so safely, responsibly, and comfortably. And this was a video that was a lot of fun to make. and it was dictated by a viewer poll on my Patreon, wherein patrons are able to dictate what single topic I cover in my next single topic video, and this was the topic that won. So look forward to seeing that on Monday. And also, the Saturday after that, August 19th at 1600 GMT, I'll be having my next Ask Me Anything session. Now, this is a time for patrons to come together on a video call with me to, yes, ask me anything, but mostly we just hang out and have a laugh together. It's always a lot of fun. Really hope to see you there. And both the viewer poll and the Ask Me Anything sessions are things that you can get in on through my Patreon, which is linked in the description below. Which reminds me, I want to thank Corinne Vasquez, Marianne Ward, Christopher Hunter, Marianne Moores, Kimberly McDaniel, Iceman98, Octavia Runjonsdottir, and Alan Valgume for being patrons on the $20 level, Ian Kingsley and Laura Johnson for being patrons on the $15 level, and Melissa Pfeffer, Christine Trowbridge, Hafstein Himmeljomi Gregerson, Stephen Ellis, and Vivi Carvalho Schaffner for being patrons on the $10 level. You folks rock. That's all for me at the Reykjavik News Desk. Be good to each other.